Hello, today we are going to do watercolor pencils, and these are my pencils, and these are the shades I'm going to use: orange, purple, mauve, yellow, red, and I'm going to sharpen them, and the shavings I get from them, I'm even going to use those. If I put a wet brush and dab that shaving, I'll get that very shade, and I can use it for some texture. These are the shades I'm going to use with my primary colors, and these are some of the um, colors already used in my other watercolor pencil projects. So we're going to sharpen them, and these watercolor pencils, they work beautifully as two mediums. They can be used to draw as well as to paint. So once we do our sketch with them, we can fill in the sketch with these very shades we need, blend them with water on our brush, and so we say we can really pull out the pigment by adding water to them on our brush. So therefore, it's a beautiful medium, serves two purposes. They're really used well when we are outdoors, our plein air paintings, or sketches at home, flowers, and like I'm going to show you, I even use the shavings. I put some water, dab some water, and I get extract the color from the shavings. And this very thing is used in as texture. So now we are beginning and we are going to do two apples. These are some other projects I've done with watercolor pencils, and this is the beautiful effects we get. So right now we are going to use this very paper. This is Canson, and it will hold a lot of water. And I'd like to call your attention to one thing, and a very important point in watercolor pencils is that you can really overwork your page. As I managed to do at the end of this painting, I did overwork it a bit, and one of the apples really pulled out the paper. So that's when you have to be very careful. Now this is a sketch I'm making of my first apple. I am using my pencil as a drawing medium, and then I will continue to use it as my painting medium. The pigment can be pulled out of this with and extended beautifully with the water on the brush, and the effect we get is a beautiful watercolor painting. So that's the sketch, and I'm leaving these two little portions on the apple where if you look at an apple, that's the shiniest part of the apple. And one side of my apple will be dark, and the other side is where the light is falling on it. Every painting you make has to have a light source. The light has to be falling on your project from somewhere. So now over here it's falling from my right, and therefore I'll keep the right side of my apple light, and the left side I will darken it and not make it so light. I'll give it darker hues and darker values by using red and blues. Now when you combine red and blue, you get a beautiful mauve. So that's the shade I saw on my apple, which I'd kept on my table to just see the shades I really need. And there were shades of yellow as well. So I put in my yellow. I'm just filling it up. And be very patient with your watercolor pencils. If you the value you will extract depends upon the pressure of the pencil you use on the paper. So if you use soft pressure, the value you will extract would be a lighter value. And if you use a harder pressure and really press your pencil down and use darker hues in it, like now I'm using the mauve and the darker blues to get a nice purplish mauvish effect when I put my water on it. It's entirely on you. So the light pressure will give you a very light shade and the dark pressures will give you very dark shades. When I put the water onto this, then you'll absolutely be able to see how the shades pick up. And here I'm keeping it light on this side, on the right side. And I'm continuing to fill it up and trying to make a lighter apple over here. And this is the apple where I overworked the page and some part of my page actually came out. So it's not like everyone's perfect, and even very good artists make mistakes. They tend to get carried away, and there's a very big point over here is, when do we actually stop watercolor painting? When do we stop? When it feels a bit right and you have got all your shades, please don't keep on working on it, because you'll see by the end of this tutorial I have overworked this second apple so much that my paper is actually lifting. So I'm going to show you that that's where anyone can go wrong. So this is how my apple is placed, and this is what I'm watching it and taking the cues from it, the shape, the colors. Continuing to put in my shades, some darker hues on the left. Just put in some reds, yellows. I wanted this apple to be of a lighter shade. And this was actually requested by a friend, that go a bit slow and show us your steps. So I decided to do everything very slowly, step by step, and specially dedicated to my friend who actually asked for this. Okay, show me how you work your watercolor pencils. So that is why I'm not going to use time lapse over here, and I'm going to make a long video and show every step I do, even my mistakes. There is very little scope to correct a watercolor pencil, so please be careful. Put in very light hues, and then you can go darker as you progress. I'm putting in my water now, and this is the fun part of the watercolor pencils, when you can see the pigment actually moving with the water and working like a watercolor painting, like any tube you would get. And it's an exceptionally easy way of carrying your colors around when you're traveling and you're addicted to painting and you'd like to sit and do a plein air. So that's where your watercolor pencils are a wonderful miracle in your painting box. Though I still love to carry my watercolors with me as well. I combine the two I do my drawing with the watercolor pencils and I paint with my watercolors. But here, this project is totally with watercolor pencils and how to move them. They are water soluble, and there are pencils which are not water soluble, so be very careful what you're buying. Mine are Faber-Castell water soluble watercolor pencils. I just bought a small set to try them out first, and then I loved the medium. The pigment moves beautifully. You can see how the places where I have really used a lot of pressure with the pencil are actually turning very dark in value, and the places where I've used very less pressure with my pencil are not showing up so much. Keep working, but don't overwork. Give it time to dry, and therefore I made 2 apples. So when this is slightly wet, I can move on to my other apple. I intended to keep this orangish, but it turned in color because I put in too much blue in the corner. So I had decided that I would first keep it of a very light shade, but so therefore you have to be careful about the colors you use, the shades you use, because you're going to blend in with the other shades and you're going to get something totally different. This is, if I wanted to keep this apple very light, I should have just outlined it orange, and I should not have added my blue. And now if this was if it was a simple watercolor painting, I would have gone over the dark shades with my bleed white and bleed proof white, and I would have covered that mistake up, but I'm letting it stay to see. Let's see what comes of it. Sometimes don't try to correct your painting right away. You don't know what kind of effect you get. Wait till the end, and then you can still use your bleed proof white to correct your mistakes. It's not that you can't correct watercolor pencils, but I have tried it time again and I have spoiled the paper. So I tend to be very careful with my color schemes and not try to color. And if I have used a different shade, I just blend it in. You have apples of all hues, so it's not like you're going very wrong with the color. I have seen green apples, I have seen purple and mauve apples, I have seen yellow apples. So this is where you could add your pigments and choose your shades. Those are my apples I've already made with my watercolor pencils, the cherries and my apples. And I am trying to, no two paintings are ever going to be alike. So don't try it and just continue. See where it goes. Just be careful and blend in the colors on the side. Don't leave thick lines. Blending it in. I'm blending the yellow in. These are my second or third layer of colors to give it a nice waxy look. See, that's the bright side, and the shadows falling on the right side. So that's my real apple. I'm just watching it to see how dark I can go. Pull in a little green. If you need to shave your pencils and sharpen them a bit more while you're painting, take a break, sharpen them, come back to your painting, look at your painting for some time, leave it for some time so it dries out, and then come and add your shades again. And that way you can get many layers. And the more, at least 3-4 layers, when you get 3-4 layers, and you can manage to get a beautiful effect. Just darken the side a bit, the left side. That's my neurographic art lying on the side. Filling in my yellows and trying to put in one more layer. Before I put in the water again, just grab this yellow, filled it in with a little bit of green. Let's put in some streaks. You do always see streaks on an apple of darker hues, darker shades. You see, watch an apple. Keep it by your project, even if you are following another painting or somebody else's reference. Then, to keep an apple on your table, you may pick up the lighting in a different manner and you could use it. Now this is where the stem comes out and it needs to be given the effect of it's sinking in, and then the stem comes out. So now I'm putting my water to the paint I have already put. I am filling it up with water again. This would be my second to third layer. Let the bright part of the apple be shown by your white of the paper. Don't try to put in white there. Later on, you won't get the same effect. Just deeper reds. As you add the colors, the apple gets a more three-dimensional look. Pull it up. Pull up your paint with your brush. You need a wet brush for this, so pull up your paint with your wet brush. I use good paper quality, and either I use Chitrapat or I use Canson and cold press cotton paper so that it can absorb a lot of water. I tend to use a lot of water when I am doing my watercolors or my watercolor pencils, and so your paper quality has to be very good. You can't be doing this on any paper at all. You have to have cold press paper which can really absorb water. If you want to tape down your project, you can from all four sides. The paper will not get warped. It's a good thing to do. I usually do tape down my project, but today I decided to let it be. Pulling down some water, pulling up the water, pull and push, pull and push. Pull it downwards from up and push it up from the base of the apple, and then you get the rounded look and the three-dimensional look of the apple. Don't leave it all white now. You could just fill in up with little water on your brush, just pulling down the color that is already there. So the highlight needs to be shaded a bit too. Putting in more yellow tones. Putting in some red tones. And as I work on one apple, I wait for the other apple to dry out a bit, and then I go back there and add my finishing touches. Pull it up. Your strokes should not be sideways. They should not be from left to right. They should be from up to down and down to up, creating a rounded effect. That's the way your strokes should move. And that's the deep vein you see on an apple. Pull out the stems now. The dark hue value of the deep blue will give us a nice depth from where the stem comes out. And our apples are really looking like they are apples. They're taking the shape of good apples. I've drawn a little shadow under the apples. That way the apples look very like they have a base on where they are. They're not floating in air. Just adding my finishing touches now. Just darkening the corners, the edges. Little streaks. If you need to increase the width of your apple, you can do it now. Just extend it with water on your brush. Just extend the paint that is already and the pigment that is already in the apple. Just see the proportion of your apple, set it right, and that's it. And do not overwork. There in the center of this apple, I have overworked the paper a bit. So that's what you're not to do. Apples are ready. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial on watercolor pencils. And do like, do subscribe, do share, and tell me what you want that I should paint for you. Thank you so much.